I'm here today with Jaromír Beránek from the city of Prague, and we're going to be talking about mobility as a service. So, firstly, welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you here today. So, mobility as a service in Prague, what's the background to this and how did this project come about?
I must say it's a relatively new concept for Prague. We have had an experience with the project which is called Recola, which serves as a mobility as a service project for shared bicycles. And what's unique about this project, and I don't mean to make any advert for the company, which is now privately owned, but it was quite unique because it was initiated and started all alone by one student, or by the time maybe already an alumnus of one of the technical universities in the Czech Republic, who just came up with an idea that there are plenty of old bicycles, and he painted a few of them along with his friends to pink and placed them outside in the streets. And at the beginning it was really a fun project. Anyone could use it for free. Then they started this mobile application, and with very limited resources, they managed to introduce a fully competitive service as opposed to all those heavy capital-backed projects which we know from all around Europe and the world. And they are still out there in the market. They managed to get a backer, a solid investor, an owner of one of the biggest Czech internet stores. And now they are quite successful, but there are other players in the market. And I think this was precisely the spark that we needed at the beginning to arouse the community and persuade people that there are other ecological alternatives to public transportation, and that they don't necessarily have to use their own cars or other means of transportations that are less environmentally friendly. So that was basically the beginning. You might know that in Prague we have one of the best city public transportation systems, but it's also fair to say that we pay quite a lot to enable the system to be as flexible and as operational as it is now. It is now being estimated that we pay as much as 25% of the city's budget to make the system running. So we are trying to constantly improve the system, find new ways how to dilute the money that we are pumping into it. And the mobility as a service concept is definitely the concept of the future. So we will try to intermingle with the new players that are coming to make the service more friendly. But the ultimate goal, obviously, for us is to make the transportation experience as seamless as possible and as ecological as possible as a whole.
Okay, perfect. And one of the main challenges that usually comes about with mobility as a service is bringing together the public and the private sector. So just interested to hear how this is coming along and what kind of challenges you've run into along the way.
I must say it's been a tough challenge because there are, again, privately owned companies that are backed by global investment funds that do not distinguish between individual cities. I understand why they approach this challenge in the way they do, but in my perspective, the one-size-fits-all solution simply cannot work all around the globe without making any local customizations. That's why I don't fancy that much companies like Uber or Lioness that simply want to transpose the subject of their business activities from the US and transplant it into European realities, which are quite different. So we are struggling to explain to those companies that they should also have some sort of social responsibility when approaching the way how they will do business in different countries. And sooner or later, we hope to see some positive results. But there are also companies, and not only Czech companies, I could name, that we are developing strategic partnerships with some of the Czech universities or one of the major Czech car makers to come up with new mobility as a service concepts that are more friendly towards people and that also respect the specifics of our city. So I could name a good example. We will soon see in Prague streets new, not gig scooters, but regular scooters like tiny motorbikes, which are going to be electrically powered, which will have swappable batteries, which will have storage space for 2 helmets, and which by no occasion, under no circumstances, will motivate their users to use sidewalks as their road instead of normal roads.
Okay.
So I strongly believe that if you talk to the right people and tell them what are your concerns and what you have on your mind, that you can find nice compromises that in the end will work mutually beneficial for both ways, and still that will keep a gap for nice profit margin, which in the end is the decisive factor if you want to start a new business model or not.
Of course. Well, it sounds like exciting times. When are you hoping the project will go live for the citizens of Prague?
Well, there are multiple projects underway. We are mostly focusing on electric car mobility at the moment. And in this respect, we are planning to roll out a solid charging station network within the frame of, I would say, 2 years, because you might know that there is one of the crucial EU regulations on the way that will start bringing some financial fines or penalties to the car makers who will not comply with the limitation of CO2 emissions by 2021.
Yeah.
So this is one of the answers the cities try to reflect and bring about in order for the car makers to be more motivated to find solutions, which in the first place will not mean for them to pay the penalties, and at the same time, which will also be beneficial for the users and the cities, having in mind, of course, that the zero emission mobility at the moment is just a concept. It doesn't really fully work as long as your electric cable and your plug and your socket and somewhere in gas burning or coal burning electric power plant. But for the future, is a good start, certainly.
Of course. And what's the reaction been from the citizens, and how are you planning on looking to engage them in your mobility as a service?
That's a very good question. We try to talk to Prague citizens, of course, but what we hear mostly is the criticism from them, which comes towards some of the new mobility as a service concepts, which are not, strictly speaking, directed on them, but rather on the tourists. You might know that Prague is one of the most heavily I wouldn't say polluted, by affected cities in Europe and maybe all around the world. So we need to think more about the Prague citizens and how to make their lives easier. So the criticism is coming towards the services like the kick scooters, be it managed from whatever company. But at the same time, people are also very curious and try to find for themselves new services and new products that will allow them to change the consumer behavior as little as possible, because people, and that's quite understandable, want to live a very easy, convenient, and comfortable life. And if you enable them to use, instead of gas-powered cars, electric-powered cars, and let them park in the city center with zero or very little taxation and very little fees, they embrace it. And I know it's tricky to say that service like that would be available to everyone across the society, because at the moment it's still the case that electric powered cars are much more expensive than classical cars. But for the future, we see this as the right way how to motivate people to change the consumer behavior a little, but to keep the level of convenience that they are seeking for.